Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the third person tower defense tutorial. So in this episode, what we're gonna do is actually take this controller right here and map it to our game using what we call a input manager. So if you take a look down here, I'm actually using this joystick to move around, but if I actually drop my controller and use this instead, the WASD keys still works. Now we also have the spacebar button to jump, we have the A button to jump here, and to move our camera we have this joystick that does the job. We also have these keys, so the left, right, up and down arrow keys, and like before we also have the mouse, so I'm holding the right click and I'm moving around, releasing it and nothing happens. Alright guys, so that's pretty much what we're going to do in this episode, so without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so let's get started guys. We are going to create a new system script once more. So inside of our script folder, I am going to go inside system and I'll right click on that. Oops. Right click, create a new C# script that I'll name input manager. Okay, so before we go any further, there is something that I'd like to say before that. Unity already has some kind of input manager, but it does not give us all the flexibility we want. We are going to create something on top of what Unity already has. So let's go ahead and remove the mono behavior. We're actually not going to inherit from mono singleton either, because we're not going to be putting this on a object. We're not going to be putting this anywhere actually, but this is still going to be static. By putting this static, that means we can call it from pretty much wherever in our code, but it doesn't really have a reference, it doesn't really have an instance in the game, so we can only call other static function, but we'll take care of that. Let's start by creating some region, because we're going to have multiple inputs. So the first one is going to be the axis, and the second one are going to be the button. Okay. Now, which one should we start with? We are going to start with the button, because they're fairly easy and it might help you understand what we're doing, and then we'll eventually move to the axis because they're a little bit more complicated. Okay, so when I'm saying buttons, I'm pretty much talking about action buttons, and by that I mean what kind of action are going to be coming out of those buttons usually. So you might have a jump button, you might have a action button, a interact button, something of the sort. So let's go ahead and write our first line. What we're gonna do is we are going to say public static bool, because we want it to return a true or false, and we'll do say the first one is going to be the action button, like this. And now this is where the Unity input manager comes in. So what we have to do is we are going to go inside of edit, project settings, and then input. On the right over here, inside of your inspector, you're going to have all of these inputs are already there with Unity, so you pretty much get these whenever you start a new project. Now, usually what I would do is I would wipe all of those and start off clean, but we actually need the submit and the cancel, because these are new and they're pretty much just used with the UI, and that's a little bit annoying, because if we remove these, then you have to put them back up there, and it gets really annoying. So what I'm going to do instead is I am going to increment the size. So right now the size is 20. I know that I have two controllers, so I have my keyboard I want to use, and I also have a gamepad that I'm about to show you. I have two of those, and I have a single button to fill, so the action button. Therefore I will increment the size by 2. So right now I have 22, and it duplicated the last entry twice. Now as for the name of these, so the first one here, as for the name of these, I'll say K underscore action, which will stand for the action button on the keyboard. Sorry. Same thing goes down here, so J underscore action. I don't know if it's J or G, because it's inverted in French, but don't worry about that. J action, right. Okay, so once we have the name down, we have to put a positive button. And we're actually going to do that right here. So for the keyboard, my action button is going to be spacebar for now. Why not? And of course, we can always change it right here. And now, the good thing about this is whenever we change it out here, it's going to change it everywhere in the code. So we just have to call K underscore action. So a little bit later on, if we want to do a keybind, something to change the keybind when we're playing the game, then it's all we have to do is change this value up here. Right, okay. Now as for the joystick is a little bit different because you can't simply be putting say spacebar or the letter O. You actually have to find which gamepad you're using and which buttons are mapped to it. So a quick Google search will do the job for me. So here I am on Google. I found this image over here on wiki.unity3d, and here they are. So basically this is the controller I'm using. I'm using a Xbox 360 controller, and the action button, I would want it to be the A button. And now right on top of it there's a little icon, not icon, but there's a little text that says 0. So that's basically the button 0. Now the way you write it inside of the project settings input is like this. So positive button, joystick, oh, not like that. Joystick spacebar 0, that's not working either. Joystick button 0. And that is how you write it. So joystick spacebar button and then spacebar once more and the index of that button. All right. So let's go back inside of our code now that we have this. What we have to do is check if input.getButton down. Now buttons are the name of the new inputs that we just put. So if input.getButton down, and then we give it which one has a priority, let's say that the gamepad is going to have the priority. So joystick underscore action, or, and then we do the exact same thing for the other one. So input.getButton down, k underscore action, like this. So if one of these is true, we return true, else we return false. Now if you actually want to make this smaller, you don't even have to do that. You could be removing the if statement and simply write return this. Okay, so I'll just leave it like that, but you understand that you could be putting it on 3.9. It doesn't really matter. Right, so now what happens is whenever we press this button or this button, then we're getting through back inside of this action button static boolean. Right, and let's actually check out the we could go check out the jump. So let's map the action button on the jump. So to do that, I am going to go inside of, where is it at, motor, then state, and we will be using the walking state. Let's go into walking state. Now inside of walking state down here, we used to do if input.getButton jump. Instead we're going to be doing if input manager dot action button, like this. So if we're pressing on the action button, go ahead and change the state for jumping state. We're going to go in the game, press play, and now if I move my camera a bit and I press on spacebar, and nothing seems to happen, and I think that is because we messed out our input a little bit. So let's go back inside of edit, project settings, input. Okay, so if we go back inside of k underscore action, we have to change the type for key or mouse button, because that's pretty much what we're using. And also the same thing for the j underscore action, key or mouse button. Now let's go ahead and hit play once more. And I am pressing on my gamepad right now, and I'm also pressing on spacebar, and we get the exact same thing. So that's a good start. So we have the A button, not the A button, but the action button mapped out. Let's go back in our code. So if we go back inside the input manager, we can actually go ahead, duplicate that. Let's create a interact button, which I'm not quite sure what it's going to do just yet. But I'm going to be putting it on the what is it, the X button on my Xbox controller. So if I go back here, X button is number 2. So let's go create that input right away. I'm going to go back inside of Unity and I will create 2 new entries. So the first one is going to be K underscore interact, and this is on keyboard, not keyboard, keyboard, and I'll be putting the F key because it's right next to the WSAD, and I think it is quite a good keybind. Alright, so next for the action, the interaction button on the joystick, I will name this J_interact, and let's go ahead and put that on joystick button number 2. Right, so now we got this done. Let's go back in our code. So if J_interact is down, or if K_interact is down, then this is going to return through. Alright, so we got two buttons mapped out. Now what else could we be putting in there? I'll also put a cancel button. So public static bool cancel button, which is going to be, in my case, the B button, so button 1. And let's actually change those name right here, so we're mixing thing around a little bit. So J_cancel and K_cancel. Back inside of Unity, create 2 more of these. The first one being K_cancel. Oops. K_cancel, and on the keyboard, this is going to be the we could be putting backspace, but I think it's a little bit too false, so let's go ahead and put something else. What is good for canceling? What feels like canceling? I could be putting escape. So let's roll with escape for now, and we'll see a little bit later on if this is fitting our need or not. Okay, next one, J_cancel, and this is the joystick button number 1. Alright, let's actually add just one more button so we can map all the these 4 buttons here. So number 3, and this is going to be let's name it ability button, but of course it can be used for pretty much anything. All we need to know is that ability is going to be mapped to the Y button on the controller. So let's go down here, J_ability, K_ability, and we are finally going to put these last 2 buttons in. So size 28, first one is K_ability, and on the keyboard this is going to be the R key. On the joystick, this is going to be the joystick button number 3, I believe. Did we put 3? Oh, wrong thing. Yes, so the Y is number 3. Okay, so we got these buttons covered. Those ones are fairly easy. Now, as for the more complicated ones, and the axes are going to be a little bit of a pain because we have to keep track of really a lot of inputs in that case. So let's actually try this out. And actually, we need 2 axes. We need a main axis and a secondary axis. So the first one would be the first joystick on a Xbox controller, and you will understand what I mean in a second. But let's go ahead and just start by creating 2 more axes. I mean 2 more inputs, and the first one is going to be K_main X. So the main axis, and we want the X component of it. So now the main axis is the WASD key that we're currently using to move. So for the main X, we want to be putting D in positive button and A in negative. So when we press D, we actually get a plus X, and when we press A, we get a minus X. Alright, now for the second one, let's actually do the Y axis. So K_main_Y. And we do the exact same thing. So positive button is going to be W, and negative is going to be S. We leave the rest like that. And now let's increment the size by 2. We're going to take the main axis of the joystick now. So J_main_X. Let's start with X. Here we go. And now this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Now, as for the positive button and negative buttons, we need to remove what's inside of here. Instead, we're gonna go down there inside of the type, change the type for joystick axis, and now the axis is, we have to go back with our reference. The axis is, in our case, the x-axis. Now, don't get confused with the 8 that we get here. That's when you actually press on the joystick. There's a button there as well. But what we really want is the x-axis in this case. So I'm going to put x, and that is going to be it. Now, just below that, g underscore main underscore y, remove the negative and positive button, change this for joystick axis, and the axis is the y-axis. Right, so that's it for our main axis. Now let's go code them inside of our of this. Alright, so let's do a public static, and now an axis does not return a boolean because it's not a are you pressed or not state, it's actually a float value. So let's do float main horizontal, I will call this, and we will do if input.getAxis, and then we check for j underscore main underscore x. If that is not equal, if that is not equal to 0, then we're gonna return that axis. So return input.getAxis. I can't type. J underscore main underscore x, like this. And then after that we'll do if, actually just copy what we get here. We're simply going to change the name. So if input.getAxis k underscore main underscore x, we do that. And if we get no input on both of these, let's just go ahead and return 0. So that's it for our horizontal. Now let's do the vertical. Same exact thing. We only have to change this by for y. So like this. And we also change the name for main vertical. Right, let's collapse these. And that's pretty much it for the main one. Let's actually go ahead and change our controls, or should we do the secondary first? Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do the secondary, then we'll change it. Let's check. So we have 4. We have 4 of these for the main axis, so we're gonna need another 4 for the secondary axis. So I will start over here by k underscore secondary x, and that is going to be on the keyboard, that is going to be left for the negative button and right for the positive button. So these are the arrow keys. And then let's go down here and do k secondary y. Negative button is going to be down and positive button is going to be up. Oh, and we also have to change this for the type key or mouse buttons, because we're not on the joystick axis anymore. So let's just make sure that this is correct. K secondary X, K or mouse button, K secondary Y, key or mouse button, K. So that's it for our keyboard. Everything should be pretty much done for our keyboard. Now let's go ahead and move on to the joystick. So J underscore secondary X, and this is a joystick axis. And let's go ahead and take a look at this. And now it says, because I'm using this joystick now, this is the secondary axis that I'll be using. That is the 4th axis. So I will go down here, leave the joystick axis on, and then choose the 4th axis, like so. And as for the y axis, it is the 5th one. So change this for J underscore secondary y, and this is on the 5th axis. Right, so now we get all of these new inputs. Let's go ahead and try them in the game after creating those values. So I'll go ahead and copy all of this. And now if we take a step back and actually look at the code, we are going to change main horizontal for secondary horizontal and main vertical for secondary vertical. Now we also have to change the value inside of those, so instead of all the main, you see, let's go ahead and put secondary. I will copy this, paste it here, 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 and finally down there as well. And there's a small mistake that I've just noticed that is going to pretty much mess up everything. I'm actually using capital K here and not in my input, so that's something you gotta be watching out for. So put these in small letters. Well, it doesn't, well, I mean, just match whatever you have here. I know that I've put small k over here, so I gotta do the same exact thing on this string parameter as well. So let me just check the button real quick, make sure I didn't mess that up. No, I got it right down here. It's just my axis were a little bit messed up. Okay, so bug prevented, I guess. Alright, so now let's go ahead and change the movement of our player for that. If you remember correctly, I think we're getting the inputs of the player inside of motor, player motor. So inside of player motor, let's go in function and right here where it says input direction, we're going to change that for so that's how we get input right now. We're getting it from the horizontal axis. Instead of doing that, we're going to be doing input.get input manager dot main horizontal, like so. And for the vertical one, input manager dot main vertical. Okay, let's go ahead and try to play this in game. Hopefully nothing breaks. Now I'm actually moving, but if you can tell, we're not going as fast as before. Now if I move my joystick around, it does the exact same thing, but I don't know if you can tell, we get that little sliding going on, and that is because we don't have a dead zone. Well, our dead zone is not big enough, so our joystick just keep on sliding because it's a little bit off its old controller. Alright, so let's go ahead and fix these two issues. And we also have another issue where the joystick is pretty much inverted. So we're trying to go up, but it actually goes down, and vice versa. So we're gonna fix this. We have to invert the y-axis. On the keyboard, it looks fine, I believe. Oh, right now I'm not able to move because the joystick is in priority. So pretty much it takes the input of the joystick first, and if there is an input, it takes that instead. But since we're moving a little bit with the joystick, we're not getting any inputs from the keyboard. So let's make sure we fix that real quick. Let's go back inside of Edit, Project Settings, Input, and under Main, Joystick Main, let's make the dead zone 0.2, and the sensitivity, I think we can leave it at 1. I'm not quite sure. Let's go ahead and do that on the J, Y as well, so 0.2. And if we press play, we shouldn't be sliding anymore. And we're not. Okay, now, and one more thing that we need to fix is on the Y-axis, we are inverted. So I'm going to check this little box here, the invert checkbox. And now it actually goes forward when I move my joystick up. So everything seems to be fine except the keyboard input, because right now, if you can tell, we're getting some not slight, but we're getting you know, some kind of acceleration going on, and that's a little bit weird. So we will change the keyboard input as well by going here in k_main_x. We are going to say gravity is equal to 8,000 and sensitivity is equal to 8,000 as well. So that is fixed for the x-axis. Now let's go in the main y. Gravity is 8,000 and sensitivity is also 8,000. Right, so we fixed the main axis. Now we can go in the secondary axis. So this is k_secondary. Let's put 8,000 in gravity and 8,000 in sensitivity. Same thing for the y-axis. And finally the joystick. Now the joystick, what we have to do is put the dead zone on something like 0.2 for both of these. And now we should be good to go. So here's our game. Moving around, pressing the action button to jump actually. And I can actually move with both of my keyboard and joystick. And I'll actually put on the webcam so you can see. Here it is. And as you can tell, this is my joystick. Not joystick, but this is my controller. And I can actually move with that. Now the only issue is the camera, because I can't really... We didn't map the secondary axis anywhere in our code, so we can't actually use it. But if you can tell, I'm moving using this, and now moving using the keyboard as well. Alright, let's go ahead and map our camera real quick so we can actually use this joystick and this joystick only. So we're going to go inside of camera motor. And that's pretty much where we take the inputs. So if we just zoom in on this a little bit, inside of camera motor, if we go inside of the initialize and update, you can tell that over here, the update, that's where we do our thing. So let's change that for input manager dot secondary horizontal, and also input manager dot secondary vertical, like so. And then if we go back inside of the game, press play on this, and now I'm using my joystick only. Oh, I'll click on the game and try to move this around. Nothing actually works, and that is because we put a check before that. We put some kind of little hack in our code. We're gonna go fix that real quick. So inside of the third person camera state, in our process motion, we actually check, are you holding the right mouse button right now? If you are, then just go ahead and do the math. But if you're not, we're not actually taking your input. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to remove that check, so it's going to work whenever, and you don't really have to hold the right mouse button. Let's go ahead and try this out in game, see how it feels. So once more, joystick, and I can then move my camera using only this. And also use the secondary on the keyboard, which are the arrow keys that we've set. Now this is all cool and dandy, but we pretty much removed the inputs we had on the mouse. So right now I can't move my camera using the mouse anymore. And that's not really cool, because I really like that. So I will go ahead and add these back up, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to go inside of the input manager. Now we know we're using the secondary horizontal to move. And what we're going to do is right below that, we are going to say if input dot get axis, and we're getting the what is it already? This is the horizontal 2 that we've created. If that isn't bigger than, if that isn't equal to 0, then we can go ahead and just do the typical return this axis. So return horizontal 2. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do the same exact thing for the vertical. So get axis vertical 2. And if that's not 0, let's return vertical 2. Right, back in our game. Press play on this. And we get the exact same thing we had before, but without the right mouse button check. Now the place where we're going to add this right mouse button check is directly inside of the input manager. So right here, right above that, or we could be putting it in the same if, but I'll just do it above so I can understand it better. We'll do if input dot get mouse button, and we'll do 1. Then we can go ahead and just do this check. Else we are not even checking. Let's do the same exact thing down here. And here we go. So that's how our code is going to look. Now if we press once more on play, we get the same mechanic. So I'm moving my mouse around, nothing happens. Now I'm holding the right click and I'm moving. And as you can tell, we do get that movement. And if we take the gamepad, we can actually start moving around as well. Press on the A button to jump. Spacebar to jump is going to work. So we have all of these inputs we can now use, and whenever we get some kind of new input, so say we want to control this using our phone, we could actually code a function inside of the input manager that does that too. Alright guys, so that's going to be pretty much it for this episode. We covered quite a lot. In the next one, which is going to be released really shortly, we're going to go all around our code and actually change our inputs for the new inputs we just put. So everything uses that now, and we can actually spawn turrets using only our joystick, because right now I have to press, I think it's F or E, or R actually. Yeah, I have to press R to enter edit mode, and that's not really cool. So we'll go ahead and change this for the, I believe it is the interact button. And yeah. Alright, so guys, thanks a lot for watching. If you have any question or comment, you can leave them in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. If you like this tutorial, or if you learned something, please just leave me a like. I really appreciate that, and I will see you guys in the next episode.